All right, Jerome, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Elul, Shaindy and Avraham Kelman, for dedicating all the shiurim this month in honor of Yechiel's engagement to Ilana Falick in the memory of their parents, Jerome and Bernice Kelman, and Alexander and Friderica David. To thank Barak, Maia, and Sandy Hoffman, Dora, Lemus, and Avi Melamed for dedicating the shiurim this month in memory of Reuven ben Emanuel. To thank Ayal Sara Steinberg for dedicating the shiurim this month in the zechus of refuah shelema for Shulamis bas Susha. The Daf Yomi Shiur in the zechus of refuah shelema for Yehuda ben Michal. Our week of learning sponsors, Jeff and Karen Cohn, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Jeff's mother, Elinor Cohn, Elga bas Binyomin, and we thank all of our sponsors for their dedication and generosity. All of the neshama should have an aliyah, the families in Nechama, and all of those who require a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. And also with that, let us begin. I'm sorry we're getting started just a moment late. I also apologize for the confusion that's happening with some of the Svarim. Obviously the tables were moved yesterday. It looks like some of the Svarim got misplaced. So my apologies for that. So we'll say, so let us begin. Today's daf is Ayin Tes 79. We are picking up on Ayin Kesuvos base 78b. We're picking up pretty much like right in the middle of the daf. Rav Papa Amar. Rav Papa says, Lo Kashya. Ultimately, again, there is no contradiction. Ha Rabbi Yehuda alibad Rabbi Gamliel. Ha Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya alibad Rabbi Gamliel. And we'll say two different versions of the positions of Rabbi Gamliel. So the Gemara says, but 1 second, is Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya kibei Shammai? Is Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva holding like Beis Shammai? Hachi Kama, this is what it means to say. Lo nechleku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel al davar zeh. Ultimately, we'll say, according to this approach, Beis Shammai Beis Hillel did not argue in this first case. Rav Shmuel David Tarbayu. So we'll say, Rav and Shmuel have a different version of this, and they explain, Bein shenaflu la nechasim achlonis arsa. Bein shenaflu lechasim mishenis arsa v'nises habal motzi miyat halakucho. So we'll say, now listen to this. Rav and Shmuel have a little bit of a different version, and Rav and Shmuel explain as follows. They hold that whether she inherited property before Erisin, whether she inherited property during Erisin and then got married, right, and then had nisuin, ultimately, habal miyotzi miyat halakuchos. The husband has the ability to go ahead and extract the property from the purchasers. So the Gemara says, Kiman, Rabbi says, whose opinion is this? Now this, of course, is a little bit of a different version, right? And in this version, what the Gemara is saying effectively is that no matter when she inherits, if halacha l'maisa, she sells the property during the marriage, husband has the ability to go ahead and extract those sold properties from the purchasers. So Kiman, whose opinion does this reflect? The lo Rabbi Yehuda, the lo Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya. The both say it's neither like Rabbi Yehuda, nor is it like Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya. To which so who does it hold? So in Huda Amri Kravasenu, they hold like the position of the rabbis. What did the rabbis hold? The Sanya, Ravosenu Chazru V'Nimnu. The rabbis went ahead and agreed. Whether a woman inherits property before Erisin, or whether she inherits it during Erisin, and now there is Nisuin, Vinises, Habal Motzi, Miyat Halakuchos. Ultimately, again, the husband has the ability to go ahead and extract property from the purchasers. I will say, we'll discuss Ta'alach Alamai. So I just want to point out, in a pretty dramatic turn, the Gemara seems to be headed down a different direction, which is anytime a woman sells property during marriage, during nisuin, husband has the ability to go and extract that property from the purchasers, even if halacha l'maisa, that property was inherited by her prior to marriage, even prior to erisin. Again, we'll see the where we kind of fall out in the halacha l'maisa. So let's see the Gemara. Mishani says Ela ve'ela modim, but however halacha l'maisa, everyone agrees that during nisuin, if she sells property, he has the ability to extract it. Says the Gemara, Lema tanina takana Susha. So we'll say, why not just mention over here takana Susha? Because what happened by takana Susha? In Usha, they instituted the following policy. They instituted ha'isha shemachra b'nichse melog b'chaye baila, that if a woman goes in and sells her nichse, her melog property during the lifetime of her husband. I also remember again, just one more time, the distinction between nichsei tzon barzel and nichsei malug. Nichsei tzon barzel is property brought into the marriage, appraised, and that value is put into the ksuba. The husband is obligated to secure that value in the event of death or divorce. Nichsei tzon barzel, that's nichsei tzon barzel. Nichsei malug is property that's not assessed, right? It's not, assessed is the wrong word, appraised. It's not appraised at the onset of the marriage, but rather again, she brings it into the marriage. The title remains hers, and ultimately again, he has the right to go ahead and use peiros. Okay? So now in Usha they instituted that if a woman sells her nichsei malug over the course of the marriage, umesa, and then she dies. What's the halacha? Haba motzi miyat ala kuchos. Ultimately, the husband has the ability to go ahead and extract the property from purchasers. So we'll say, so essentially what Takanos Usha is saying is that what? A husband has the ability to extract property from purchasers. To which the Gemara says there's two different cases. Masnisin bechayeha ula peiros. And we'll say our Mishnah is talking, interestingly enough, about the ability of a husband to go ahead and extract property from purchasers during the lifetime of his wife. Right? So remember again, that's what our Mishnah is focused on. She sold property during her lifetime. Now we're talking about husband's ability to extract that property while she's alive. However, masnisin bechayeha ula peros, takanas usha begufa shal karka ula achar nisa. So I will say our Mishnah is really focused on a husband's ability to use the property and to extract the property from purchasers while the wife is alive. Takanas usha is focused on husband's ability to extract property after she has passed away. So two different cases. So I'll say, let's finish up. Rabbi Shimon cholik bein nechasim. So Rabbi Shimon goes ahead and makes a distinction. It's actually very interesting. So between property that the husband knows about and property that the husband doesn't know about. So says the Gemara. So I'll say, I'll just mention, just before we go on, let me give you a little bit of halacha l'maisa. So the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus, Perek Chaf Beis, halacha zayin, says, Kol nechasim sheyish leisha. Whatever property a woman has, meaning nichsei tzon barzel or nichsei malug, the halacha is during the lifetime of the wife, husband eats the peiros. Right? Husband gets the benefit from it, and ultimately, again, if she dies, he inherits her. Therefore, listen to this. Lefichach, therefore, if a woman sells off nichsei malug after nisuin, afa pisha osim hanechasim naflu lakodim shetis ares, habal motzi aperos miyad alakuchos kol yimei chayal. Supposed to listen to this. So ultimately, again, if a woman sells nichsei malug during her lifetime, what's the halacha? A husband is fascinating. A husband has the right to seize peiros from the purchasers. You hear this, what I'm saying? Not the guf, not the actual property itself, because he doesn't own the property. What does the husband own during his wife's lifetime? What does he own? Peiros. Therefore, I will say, let's watch this. Rachel owns a field. During Nisuin, Rachel sells the field. Reuven, husband, has the ability to go to the purchasers and extract peiros from the field from the purchasers. Not the karka itself, because he doesn't own the karka, but he does own the right to the peiros. Aba lo gufa karka, husband doesn't have. Mesa, if she dies, then husband has the ability to go ahead and extract the property from the purchasers, because he is now the inheritor of that property. It's also so fascinating. So she could sell, but if she sells, ultimately, again, he could extract peiros from the lekuchos, but not the karka itself. So the Gemara now says, when is this? And when is this so? So Rabbi Shimon makes a distinction between property he knows about, property he doesn't know about. So says the Gemara, Eluhain Yuduin, Eluhain Shein Yuduin. But say, what are properties that the husband knows about and properties that the husband doesn't know about? To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Yuduin B'karkoi, Shein Yuduin B'talkali. So we'll say, so Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina says, known property means real property. Unknown property means movable property. Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Elu V'Elu Yuduin Hein. Ultimately, again, both of those, we'll say both movable property and real property, are called known property. So we'll say, what then is an example of unknown property? I suppose a good example of this would be she owns property overseas that he literally does not know about. That supports this. Eluhain she'en yiduen. So what's the example of unknown property? Kol she'yosheves kan v'naflu lo nechasim dinas hayam. Any time where she's living in one place and she inherits property in a different place. And I just want to point out that indeed the Rambam mentions this, and the Rambam says, when is this so? When is what so? That if a wife goes in and sells property during her lifetime, right, the husband has the ability to extract payros from the purchaser, and ultimately if she predeceases him, he has the ability to extract the actual karka from the purchaser. When is that? This only applies to property the husband knows about. So I will say, but, for example, if ultimately she owns property overseas and he does not know about it at all, and she sells the property, the Rambam paskins, michra kayim. Ultimately, again, such a sale is absolutely valid, and even after her death, he doesn't have the ability to collect that property from purchasers. Incredible. Let's go back to I'll say this is a fascinating case. Let's listen to this. There was a woman who was getting married. Rashi points out she was an almana. Second marriage. This woman, we'll call her Rachel. She was married to Reuven. She's widowed. Reuven died. She's now going to marry Shimon, not her brother, not Yibum, just a second marriage, right? Second marriage. As we're going to see, she has kids. Let's say she does not want her husband, her new husband number 2, to have any rights in her property. So we'll say, what does she want to do? So literally translated, she wants to literally cause her property to run away from her husband. In other words, she wants to shield the property from her husband. So she has a great chap. What does she do? Kasatinu lebarte. She wrote a document gifting the property to her daughter. And I will say, did she actually mean to gift the property to her daughter? Absolutely not. It's a shtickle sham. In other words, she's writing a document so that it looks like she's gifted her property to her daughter prior to marriage. Therefore, her husband has no rights in this property. Okay, so what happened? We'll say, in Saba, Rachel gets married to Shimon. Sure enough, it doesn't work out. Not sure enough, but chances are, if you're the kind of person who's not willing to share with your husband, it's probably not going to work out, right? But again, so ultimately, again, they get divorced. This garsha. We'll say tabav tes. So now, what happens? Rachel goes to her daughter, and what does Rachel want from her daughter? Rachel wants her property back. So they come up for Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, "Mom, no, you gave me the property. Here's the shtar. Here's the document." She produced the shtar in Beis Din. What happened? So Kari Rav Nachman the shtar. Rav Nachman saw the shtar. He tore it up. Wow. So we'll say, so he tore it up. Now, obviously, Rav Nachman, listen to this. So also Rav Anan lekamei Mar Ukva. Rav Anan went before Mar Ukva. Amar le chazi Mar Nachman chaklo heichi makra shtari deinshi. Do you see what Nachman chaklo? Now we'll say chaklo literally means a farmer, right, or a poor person. So this is incredible. So ultimately, again, Rav Anan says, can you imagine this scene? You're in Beis Din, right? A person produces a shtar. Rav Nachman just tears up the shtar. So ultimately, again, Rav Anan says to Mar Ukva, who is this guy? Right? Look at Rav Nachman, the farmer. In other words, that was an insult, right? To call the Talmud Chacham the farmer. In other words, look at Nachman, the farmer. What is he doing? He's tearing up people's shtaros in Beis Din. Amar le ema li easy gufa de uvdi haichi hava. We'll say this is such a good lesson. So the first thing Mar Ukva says is, calm down. Tell me what happened. Let's go through the facts. Because maybe if we go through the facts, right, your assumption that Rav Nachman is not qualified for these matters may be wrong. So Amarle, hachi v'hachi hava. So Rav Anan told Mar Ukva. Ultimately, again, what happened? In other words, went through the whole case. Amarle, so Rav Ukva said, now I understand. Shtar mavreches ka'amrit. So I will say, this is what's called ishtar mavreches. So I will say, this is actually fascinating. What's a shtar mavreches? Mavreches means what? Livroach, to run away. Shtar mavreches is when you write a document for the sole purpose of conveying property to another, not because you want to actually convey ownership to them, but rather what? Because you want to shield it from someone else. So I will say, that's this case, right? Rachel's getting married to Shimon. Rachel doesn't want Shimon to have rights on her property. So what does she write? She writes a document conveying ownership to Rachel's daughter. Does Rachel actually have intent to convey ownership to her daughter? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Varaya, as soon as she got divorced from Shimon, she's coming back to get her property back. The only reason she's writing this document is to create the appearance that the property has been conveyed to another, so as to shield it from another party. That is called ishtar mavrachas, a document written for the sole purpose of shielding property from another individual. So the Gemara says, after all, again, Haki Amar Bichanelei Bar Idi Amar Shmuel Mora Hora'ani. Alright, so we'll also listen to this. Rabbi Chanilai Bar Idi said in the name of Shmuel, I am a Mora Hora'ah, I'm a posek, Im Yavo Shtar Mavrachas Liyadi Akarano. Wow, that's it. And if a Shtar Mavrachas comes to me in Beis Din, I'll rip it up. Because Rabbi say it makes sense. A shtar like that is meaningless, right? There's no intent to actually convey ownership. Essentially, again, it's a legal fiction. Is there such a thing like that? A legal fiction, right? It's right. You're creating a document that is literally not real. So tear it up. So Rabbi say, Amalei Rav Nachman Taima Mai. So Rabbi say, why is that? Why is that? In other words, why is a shtar mavrachas considered to be problematic? So Gemara says, because we'll say in general, a person is not going to put themselves at a disadvantage in order to enrich someone else. So we'll say, so again, that's why shtar mavrachas, people don't just give stuff away. I will say this is in general a good yesod in life, which we all know, especially as we get older. People never give stuff away, and if it has the appearance that they're giving stuff away, there is always something, right? There's always some string attached in some way, shape, or form. So the Gemara says, I would have thought, Hanimili Lachrini. The most say the truth is, I would have said that's true with other people. Aval Labarta Yahavi. But I will say, but maybe in the case of a child, maybe the exception to this rule is one's child. Right? In general in life, I don't give stuff away, and if I do give something away, there's a reason for it. Maybe when it comes to one's child, one does engage in a selfless act of giving. To which the Gemara says, "Afilu hachi b'makom barti nafshi adifale." It's true, I will say, but still, even with one's child, one's own needs ultimately come first. I will say, the truth is that statement is not usually true in actual child. Parents make sacrifices for their children all of the time. The point the Gemara is making over here in a context like this, we clearly see that it was not Rachel's intent to gift something to her daughter, right? What was her intent? To shield the property from her new husband. Incredible. If a woman wants to shield her property from her husband, what could she do? She can write a shtar pasim. I will say, we actually had shtar pasim. Remember again back in Yevamis. Look at Rashi. Rashi's almost right across. What's a shtar pasim? Piyusim shemifaisaso lekabel matona zu lafkia zechus baila kodem nisuin v'lo sheyiskim mekabel. We'll say, by the way, the classic case of shtar pasim I'll point out is, we'll say, let's say I come over to you and I say, listen, I'm trying to secure a loan from the bank. Do me a favor. Let's write up a loan document that you owe me $1 million. Not collectible. I got it. You don't owe me. But just write it up so that way I can walk into the bank and I can say, look, I have an IOU. Right? In other words, I have a loan that's coming due to me. So we'll say, so the same idea, the Gemara says a woman wants to go ahead and shield her property from her husband. She can convince someone to go ahead and be the recipient of a gift, so to speak, and write up a gift document in which she conveys ownership of the property to another party. So we'll say, the Gemara says, these words of Reb Shimon say, well, if you do that, ultimately the recipient, I will say, in other words, the recipient in that shtar could really pull shtick, right? How could the recipient pull shtick? I will say, how? Because now, I will say, like this case, because now, when the conveyor, let's say the woman, wants to get her property back, the recipient could say, what are you talking about? We have a shtar. And ultimately the recipient could use that shtar to solidify their claim. Ad shetichtov lo the only way to ensure that the recipient doesn't pull shtick is how? Shetichtov lo mehayom u'lechisha erza. I will say what you do is you include this clause that this transaction is valid mehayom from today if I choose to activate it. See, it's interesting. So what you do is you put in the document an activation clause. Fascinating. And the activation clause says, this document is only activated should I willingly accept it from today and forward. Very interesting. Look at Rashi. Ache tichtov, Rashi is right across. Ache tichtov, b'shtar ze mehayom nisun lecha u'lechisha ertze yesh kan avracha mi baylo. So we'll say, Shimba liskos tomar eni rotze. We'll say this way, if the recipient wants to pull shtick, she could simply say, I do not want the transaction to be void. If the husband tries to take ownership of the property, then she could activate the document. Fascinating. To which the Gemara says, Taimo, the kas v'leihachi. The reason ultimately against such a star like this will work is because she wrote this clause. Ha lo kas v'leihachi kanen alokeach. They will say, had she not gone ahead and written this clause, ultimately the purchaser or the recipient would acquire it. She will say, sounds like what? Sounds like what? That a shtar havracha actually does convey ownership to the recipient. Fascinating. They will say, you're right, there are different cases. Sometimes the shtar havracha will work, sometimes it won't work. So we'll say, so ultimately, again, it depends. Is she conveying over all of her property? Is she conveying over some of her property? Ultimately, again, the Gemara says, if she's conveying all of her property, we don't look at this as a real transaction because we assume a person is not going to want to self-impoverish, right, willingly. Versus if she's going ahead and conveying over a piece of her property, then enochinami, in that case, the shtar havracha ultimately could work. To which the Gemara says, V'i lo kanini lokeach nikninhu bal. But if that's the case, I will say at the end of the day, if a shtar havracha doesn't work, and therefore, again, I will say, let's go back to our original case. Rachel's getting married to Shimon, Mazel Tov, second marriage. She's looking to shield her property from her second husband. So what does she do? She writes a document conveying ownership of her property to her daughter. Right? Shtar havracha. Let's assume for a moment now we're talking about a case where she's conveying all of her property over to her daughter. Okay, so now we know you're conveying all of your property over to your child. No, you're not. You're just simply going ahead and trying to shield the property from your husband. So we say, I will say that's what? Such a shtar is invalid. And that's why, again, when that case came before Rav Nachman, what did Rav Nachman do with the shtar? Tore it up. So I will say, so now if that shtar is really invalid, that means Rachel's daughter doesn't acquire the property. If Rachel's daughter doesn't acquire the property, who should acquire the property? The husband. The husband. So why doesn't the husband acquire the property in such a situation? Amar Abaye, asom kinichasim she'ein yiduin lebal v'alibid Rabbi Shimon. They will say this is fascinating. Essentially, in this case, where she conveys ownership of the property to her daughter or to any third party, we make it like property that is unknown to the husband, and therefore, like Rabbi Shimon, and therefore, again, he has no rights in it. So we'll say, what comes out from this sugya is very interesting. That essentially, we'll say, there's something called the shtar havracha, also known as a shtar pasim. Same idea, where when you have a shtar where it's clear. I will say that what's not my intent with the shtar? I know that's bad English. What's not my intent? To convey ownership, right? What is my intent? Shield property, make myself look richer than I am, whatever it might be. But Lamaisa, in that case, I will say, halacha Lamaisa, there's no conveyance of ownership. Therefore, again, should the recipient try to claim that they are the owner, tear up the shtar. Meaningless. But I will say, however, again, the only work, shtar havracha, is only meaningless in a case where a person is conveying all of their property. If they're just conveying, let's say the woman was just conveying part of her property, ultimately, again, it would work. Good. We'll say Mishnah, fascinating Mishnah. Naflun ksafim. So we'll say, here's the interesting case. Continuing in these cases where a woman acquires property. Let's say she inherits money. So we'll say, so now what happens? What do you do with money that she inherits? Yilakach ban karka. We'll say this is during marriage. During marriage, she acquires money. So what happens? You purchase property with that money. She owns the property. He gets the peros of the property. Peros atalushim in a karka. But let's say she inherits detached produce. So what do? Yilakach bahan karka. You sell the detached produce. Use the proceeds to buy karka. Fuachal peros. And ultimately, again, she retains title. She owns it, but he gets peros. Peros amichubar mekarka. Let's say she inherits attached produce. Rabbi Meir. Shamin osa kamehi yafa beperos. We assess How much is the land worth with the peiros? The kami yafa below peiros. How much is the land worth without the peiros? That becomes now the value of the peiros. Umosar yilakach behen. Umosa yilakach ben karka. The difference in value is used ultimately again to purchase property. She owns the property. And ultimately again he'll eat the peiros. Chacham say hamichubar lekarka shalo. Chacham say no. If there's attached produce belongs to the husband. Vatalusha min akarka shala. Detached produce is hers. What do you do with it? Sell it. V'yilakach ban karka, use the proceeds to purchase land. V'ocha peros, she owns the title to the land, and ultimately again he eats peros. Rabbi Shimon says, this is very interesting. Makom sheyafa kocha b'knisaso, hora kocha b'yitziasa. So we'll say, where the husband has greater rights during marriage, he has lesser rights in divorce. Makom shora kocha b'knisasa, where she has less rights, the entry of marriage, yafa kocha b'yitziasa. She has greater rights in divorce. How does this play out? Ketzad, here we go. Peiros hamichubaron lekarka. So we'll say, for example, let's say they get married and there's attached produce. So ultimately, again, attached produce belongs to who? Him. That's called peiros. Or b'yitziasa shela. Yet attached produce at the time of divorce will belong to her. Vatlushim in akarka, detached produce, b'chinisasa shela. Ultimately, again, when they enter into marriage, is hers, or be its yasa shalom, and when they get divorced, are his. Okay, so it says, we'll say, let's analyze. So we'll say, so now the first thing we learned is that halacha l'maisa, that if she inherits money over the course of marriage, what do we do with that money? We invest it in karka. So we'll say, now the Gemara brings down a very interesting case. What happens, halacha l'maisa, she inherits money, they have a disagreement as to how to invest the money. What should we buy with the money? So the Gemara listen to this. We'll say, Pshita, Ara Ubati. So we'll say, let's say one of them says we should purchase land, karka, and one of them says we should purchase a home. What's the halacha? Ara. We purchase land. Bati, vidikli. One says let's purchase a house, and one says let's purchase palm trees. Bati, we purchase a house. We'll say the idea over here is how do we decide which one? We'll say the goal is you invest the money in whatever holds value the longest. Because obviously that's the goal over here. The goal is we want to protect her Karen, right? We want to protect her principal. So we want to put that money into whatever holds its residual value longest. So between karka and a home, put it into karka. Between ultimately again a home and palm trees, put it right. Bati v'dikli bati. Dikli v'ilani, palm trees and fruit trees. Dikli, palm trees. Ilani v'gufni, what about fruit trees and grapevines? Ilani, fruit trees. Okay, so we'll say, all just different examples how we invest the money. So the Gemara goes weiter. Abba zardasa upeira de kavri. So we'll say it's very interesting. Now transitioning a little bit. Abba zardasa means a forest of sorb trees. Okay, peri de kavri means a fish pond. So amrile peira, amrile karna. So we'll say, how do you look at these items? Are these items considered to be peiros, or are they keren? Are they principal? And we'll say, obviously, again, there's a major nafkamina. What's the major nafkamina? Ultimately, again, keren is hers, peiros are his. So ultimately, who gets to use this? So we'll say, this is fascinating. Klala de milsa. And we'll say, here is the klal. How do you determine what's keren and what's a pri? So the Gemara says, klala de milsa, gizel machlif, anything that regenerates, Peira. Ein gizal machlif, anything that doesn't regenerate, ultimately, karna is karen. That's it, I will say. That's the guiding light principle. If it regenerates pre, if it doesn't regenerate, ultimately karen. Amr Rabbi Zera, Amr Rabbi Oshi, Amr Rabbi Yanai, Amr Rabbi Abba, Amr Rabbi Shara Yanai. Hagonev, interesting case over here. Hagonev, Amud Beis. Hagonev, Vlad Behemas Melog. But say, listen to this. Let's say you steal the offspring of a malug animal. So just to be clear, what's a malug animal? Right? Rachel marries Reuven, and what? She brings in a sheep into the marriage. Okay, so now what happens? The sheep, Mazel Tov, has a baby. Right? The sheep has a baby. So this is what's called Vlad Behimas Malug, the offspring of a malug animal. Now, what happens? Okay, just to further complicate a little bit, someone steals the malug animal. Then ultimately, again, the thief is found. There's an obligation of kefel. double payment. Who gets the kefal? Who gets the kefal? Let's listen to this. So Vlad behema. So now say. So this is all of these. We'll call it Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai says, if a person steals the offspring of a malug animal, the thief is found. They now pay kefal, double payment. Who gets the payment? Leisha. Interesting. Ultimately, again, the wife gets the double payment. So we'll say, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Tashlumi kefal leisha. We'll say second line down, 79b ayin testimony days. Tashlumi kefal leisha. V'lo lebal, not to the husband. Kasavar einav lados peri ele keren v'ilakach ben karka. So we'll say, it's actually very interesting. So what does that tell you? If the wife gets the kefal, what does that tell you? Remember, also, let's go back for just a second. When it comes to the wife's property, what does the wife have? What does the wife have? Keren, principal. What does the husband have? Peros. The fact that the wife is getting the kefal tells us that what? How do we look at the offspring of the malug animal? Like Karen. Like Karen. Now, both say, why would you look at the offspring of the animal as Karen? Isn't that Peros? So we'll say, Rashi points out something very interesting. Since over here, if the animal dies, there's nothing left, that's called Karen. Right? Because remember again, what's Peros? Peros is only if what? If it regenerates. Right? But Lamaise, if ultimately it can be used up, that's called Karen. So Bepashtos, the Gemara says over here, this is Karen. So Kiman, whose opinion does this reflect? Lo ki Rabbana, lo ki Chananya. Apparently it's not like the Rabbana, nor is it like Chananya. This Sanya, here we go. Vlad behemas malug lebal. We'll say, get ready for this. Here's the brisa. The offspring of a malug animal, right? So again, she brings in a sheep to the marriage. The sheep, Barak Hashem Kanai has babies. The offspring of a malug animal belongs to the husband. Because we call that, what according to the brisa? What do we call that? Peros. Vlad shifchas malug leisha. But the offspring, let's say she brings in servants. The offspring ultimately, again, of a shifcha, right, that's called Karen, and that belongs to the wife. The Chananya ben Achioshia Amar, Asu Vlad Shifchas Malug, Ki Vlad Behemas Malug. Shabbos said, Chananya disagrees, and Chananya says, no, halacha lamaisa, the offspring of a shifcha is no different than the offspring of the behema. They're both called peros. They're both called peros. Shabbos say, according to the Tanakhama, according to the Rabbanon, ultimately, again, offspring of an animal is called a pri, according to right, but offspring of a shifcha not. According to Chananya, both offsprings are like a peros. Either way, we have a problem because what did the Gemara just say before? If you steal Vlad behemas malug, right? You steal the offspring of a malug animal. The thief is found. The thief pays kefel. Who gets the kefel? The wife. Which seems like that's saying that the offspring of a malug animal is Karen, not Peros. And the problem is, everyone just quoted, both Chananya and the Rabbanon hold that offspring of a malug animal is Peros. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, no. Afilu tema, divriyakol, Pera takino la Rabbanon. The Rabbanon instituted ultimately that the husband should have Peros. Pera lo takino la Rabbanon. They will say, what does the husband have rights to? Peros. What doesn't he have rights to? Peros of the peros. They will say, what's an example of peros of the peros? Kefel. So we'll say, think about this. The husband has a right, ultimately, again, to the offspring of the malug animal. That's called peros. But now, kefel that comes from the offspring of the malug animal, that's peros, that's pre de pre. That's a pre. Who said the husband has rights to that? That was never instituted. That's why halacha lamaisa, the kefil goes to the wife. It's great. To which the Gemara says, Bishlam ala Chananya. According to Chananya, this makes sense. Why? Hainu d'lo chayshina lemisa. So we'll say, because in general, Chananya will say, we're not worried that the mother is going to die. In other words, whether it's the mother of the animal or the mother shifcha. So the mother animal, right? The mother animal and the mother shifcha, that's the Karen, and that's why according to Chananya, the offspring is considered to be the pri. All right? And we're not concerned that the mother animal, mother shifcha is going to die, and therefore the Karen's gone, and therefore the Vlad becomes the Karen. So the Gemara says, El Rabbanan, so here's the problem. And that's why Chananya holds both the offspring of the animal and the offspring of the Eved belongs to the husband, is considered to be a pri. The problem is according to who? The problem is according to the Rabbanan. Because Rabbanan say the offspring of an animal is a priya, belongs to the husband. The offspring of the shifcha is what? Is Karen and belongs to the wife. Why that distinction? If we're afraid that the mother is going to die, ultimately again, then even the offspring of the animal should be Karen, and therefore should belong to the wife, not to the husband. And if the Rabbanon are not concerned for the death of the mother, then then ultimately the offspring of the Malug Shifcha should also belong to the husband, to which the Gemara says, you're right. The Olam Chayshinu Lamisa. In reality, in general, we're concerned that the mother is going to die, both by the Malug animal and by the Shifcha Malug, by the Malug Shifcha. We're afraid the mother is going to die. So we'll say, so what's the issue? What's the issue? Listen to this. V'shayni behema di'ika ora. We'll say, here's what's fascinating. So we'll say, let's work backwards. So in the case of where, let's say, the woman brings in a shifcha, she brings in a maidservant, and that's nichsei malog. Now the shifcha has a child. So what's the halacha with the offspring of the shifcha? What's the step? What's the halacha? Who does it go to? It goes to the wife. It's considered to be Karen. Why is it considered to be Karen? Because the Rabbanan are concerned that maybe the shifcha is going to die, and if the shifcha dies, there's quote unquote nothing left, and therefore the offspring becomes the Karen, and that's why that belongs to the wife. In the case of an animal, even if the mother dies, I will say there is still residual Karen. What's the residual Karen if the malug animal dies? What is it? The hide, the wool. In other words, there's still Karen that's there. So as long as there's still Karen that's there, that's why the offspring of the malug animal will be considered to be a pri and will ultimately belong to the husband. Incredible. Amar Friderica, Amar Shmuel, halacha kichananya. Halacha follows chananya. That's how he passed about say, namely what? That both the offspring of the shifcha, of the malug shifcha, and the offspring of the malug animal, both belong to the husband. They're both called peros, because chananya says we're not choshesh that the mother animal or that the mother shifcha is going to die. They remain the Karen. The two offspring, therefore, are peros. So Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, Chananya, even though Shmuel says is like Chananya, Umoda Chananya, and Chananya agrees, Sheniskarsha no senes damim binatlasan mipnei shevach beis aviha. Shavuot said it's very interesting, right? That ultimately, again, listen to this. So halacha l'maisa will say, Chananya agrees that let's say the couple gets divorced, right? The couple gets divorced, and Rabbi said at this point in time when the couples get divorced, the husband has in his possession, what does he have? He has the offspring of the shifcha, the offspring of the behema malog. Now listen to this, that she should buy back those items. She should buy back those items from the husband. Why should she buy back those items from the husband? Mipnei shevach beis aviha. Because let's remember again, where did that property come from? Right? Came from her father's estate. So ultimately, again, she should buy back those particular peros from her husband. Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, Hichnisa lo eiz lechalba, v'racha legizasa, v'tarnagolis leveitsasa, v'deka leperosa. So we'll say, listen to this. So let's say she brings into the marriage the following thing. A goat for its milk, right? Or ultimately, again, a sheep for its wool, or a chicken for its eggs, or a palm tree, ultimately, again, for its peros. So we'll say, obviously, so remember, who retains title to all these items? Who retains title? Who retains title? The woman. Who gets the peros? Who gets husband? And I will say, here's something fascinating. I will say, let's say, this will have to stop, but let's say, halacha l'maisa, he's eating peros to the point of depletion of the Karen. Is that permitted? To which the Gemara says, yes. To which the Gemara says yes. That halacha l'maisa, he's permitted to eat, even if ultimately, again, through his consumption, the Karen is depleted. We'll say, we'll stop over here. Shkoyach. Nathan.